And whatever
So yeah,
works.
yeah. Okay, I'll start it over. We'll do it a third time. Welcome back to GaulCast, everyone. I'm Reno Tarvos,
And I'm Marcados.
and this is the third time we're trying this. We're having some technical issues. I got a new computer, but all of my old devices aren't playing nice with it. Just a shame because it's a really nice computer. But drivers are missing. They're not working. I keep getting kicked out of the Zoom call. What? And
That's all
so we're
good.
now resorting to me being on my phone.
You
But
know what? Whatever
that's
works. And like I've said, this is not new territory for me. I'm usually the one that has like all the really bad audio issues. So I'm
yeah,
it's just funny it's happening to someone else for once.
yeah, right. Yeah, you're laughing it up. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna work on this the future issues. I'll see exactly what's going on. The next couple ones might have to be recorded on the phone, but at least you can hear us. Um, and yeah, we're gonna take it as it comes. So Articados and I actually several times have started this conversation, but we need to issue a slight retraction because when it takes about 4 months for an episode to come out, turns out things you said previously may not be up to date scientifically. And again, this is always subject to change, but a recent paper that was published actually pushed back or pushed forward the arrival of Germanic people into what we know as Central Europe. So, where it was previously thought that, there was a migration that ended up splitting, and we're talking about, the Yamnaya culture and all those that we mentioned in our previous episode, those would have been split into Celtic and Germanic and Latin. We now actually realize that Germanic people, at least genetically, and again, genes and cultures aren't always the same, actually probably don't descend from the Yamnaya culture, but from a related, separate culture that was still in the steppes. So Germanic peoples actually remained in the steppe area far longer. And their arrival is now pushed to a very, very late Neolithic, possibly even early Bronze Age. Um, and we also know now, at least genetically, and again, because culture spreads differently, that they first arrived in Scandinavia and stayed in Scandinavia for quite a bit and then left in several different waves. But this actually goes to show that, when we first start seeing them mentioned in history, in classical writings, in Roman sources around the 300, 200 BCE, they probably weren't around in the area a lot before that. So we're talking, 400 years or so before that, just guesstimation. Um, so it's very, very interesting. And another thing that I know that you'll think is super interesting is that the paper also showed that while Germanic people did migrate from Scandinavia, they came through Poland, they came through Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and they would then meet with local populations and they'd essentially mix and they'd create populations that had Germanic aspects and aspects of the people that were already living there. Be that hunter-gatherer people or Anatolian farmers or other people that spoke Indo-European languages. And this is really interesting because we've talked about this before in regards to Gaul being a gradient, that the more closer to the Rhine you get, the more Roman admixture you have. And the further south you go, the more Mediterranean cultural and artistic influence you would see. And what's even a slightly different tangent, but what's even cooler about that is that we actually see a remigration from southern Germany and Saxony back into Scandinavia. So all this thing that we've been saying in Galpol, mostly up in our own little brains and our own rabbit holes we've fallen down to, the fact that there are aspects of Gaulish culture that very, very well might have been carried all the way up to Scandinavia and influenced what was the ancestor of what we now know of as Norse mythology. is really, really cool. To what extent, we don't know. But again, that idea that we really get Norse mythology out of the meeting of Germanic and Celtic and other cultural groups, and then that's taken back into Norse and remixed, and it gives me kind of the idea, that age-old theory where people have between like uh, Odin and Odr and Frigg and Freya, and that big debate on whether they're separate or they're together. This is again more on the Germanic side of stuff, which is not the focus of this podcast, but it does lend interesting credence to some of the theories that perhaps one of them is a continental version and one is a, you know, more Scandinavian version, and then the Continental got brought back up, and it was kind of the same but not, and there was a clash of different peoples. But it's just a lot of fun stuff, and I really look forward to seeing what comes out of academia right now. And again, that's just current theory. Who knows? In 2 or 3 years, there'll be maybe more stuff. But it's very good for us because we're seeing more and more now through science, especially that tracks material culture and genetic dispersal and language. And none of these things are culture in themselves, but they're all components of it. It does point towards a lot of classical sources like Jordanes and Saxo actually being more accurate than we had previously assumed. But again, still not 100%. They all have their own agendas, but
Oh
very,
yeah.
very interesting. And I'm just super excited to see where we go from here. So that'll be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of the whole reconstruction game is that when we get more information, we're able to build or in this case rebuild our speculation and theories to get a more accurate depiction. And yeah, it's fascinating because it does show how malleable culture is and was and always will be, and that some things aren't just always set in stone, like how we don't know exactly how much Gaulish Celtic influenced Germanic and Norse. I mean, there's always the first thing that comes to my mind is the similarities between the Celtic knotwork that we see in Latin material culture and a lot of the very similar spirals and knotwork that we see in a lot of Norse artwork as well. But
Mm.
well, and but like yeah, while you're this is a Gaulish podcast, it doesn't hurt to talk about some of the talks and things that go on in like with Norse paganism and those groups because with the hundreds and hundreds of different gods that we can observe in Gaulish polytheism, um, theonyms is always going to be an element. Like what tribes would are likely to have worshipped the same tribal deities that in their pantheons. Like were they separate, or was it just literally just a slight different spelling in the name because it's different in different
Mm.
tribes? So it, like that conversation is still very applicable to Gaulish polytheism. So, but yeah,
You're
that's why
exactly
I
right.
yeah.
You're exactly right. And also, it is one of the joys of recon that you are able to update and find that stuff. But I also don't want it to feel discouraging for people who have built a praxis upon their own gnosis and now science is coming and telling them something different. But like science is just the best guess. For those of you out there who may have a more unique personal take, like perhaps you think that Cernunnos and Odin are the same guy, through whatever personal reasons. And I'm just coming up with an example off the fly. I don't know if anyone actually thinks about this. But I don't want to single anybody out by using real examples that I know of. So, but if whatever reason you had, it was good, it was solid, it fit for you, and then science comes out and says, "Oh, that's less likely." Don't feel discouraged about that because a a syncretism or what I prefer to a doxa, a way of knowing through experience, is valid for you to engage with in a modern sense too. It doesn't have to have been done historically. And again, there was never ever a unified singular way, and there was never a static way. It's not like the Norse pantheon just or belief system. I hate the word pantheon. Just popped into existence and stayed static. I mean, we see it especially when you compare continental sources, what little we have with Norse ones. The fact that Odin or Wodan and characters that derive from him are oftentimes described with very warlike imagery, very Mars, and that to them is oftentimes tied the image of a sword, just something Odin doesn't have. So things change constantly over time. So don't be discouraged by that either. I just wanted a quick aside there.
No, that's I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, don't let something discourage you because yeah, like it just to kind of add on to it. Yeah, the Germanic people, the Gauls, they were not in any way monolithic. They were not homogeneous. They did not all think the exact same way. And
Yep.
that goes, it definitely goes in your practice, and things could change down the line. Maybe the archaeological evidence was misinterpreted. You never know. It's just, but don't let anything like that discourage you. If it's affecting your praxis, your personal belief system, yeah, don't let it hinder you.
Exactly. Yeah. Because as a reconstructed faith and as new movements, and I'm putting all of neo paganism, reconstructionism, eclecticism, whatever, we're all in the same boat. We're just fighting over which is the most optimal ore to use, which I think is silly. We should really all be working together, and also, with the living traditions that are open to that. And by living, I mean continuous. Of course, we're all living. We're all doing it honestly. Um,
Yeah,
but we're all in this together, and if your doxa differs from something, still valid. This is a new movement. We're starting things, and even not when it's a couple hundred years old, things are going to change again, and things will always change. So don't be averse to that. But you touched on something that was about overculture and how the Gauls were not monolithic. And I think that's a great jumping into point for Latin culture, because as we talked last time, Latin, we have now we have finally arrived at the culture that most historians do label as a Celtic culture. And again, culture is difficult for us to view retroactively, but the majority of people that participated in this type of culture spoke a Celtic language that was probably pretty recognizable to other Celtic languages. You have P Celtic, Q Celtic. Is that where that starts? You're a bit more into the language side, so I'll let you touch on that.
that phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting. I'm fascinated with the language, but like a lot of the nuances in the history is it goes a lot of it goes over my head. But yeah, I think that's when like the P and the Q Celtic comes up. But I mean, yeah, like I highly doubt there was one synonymous or not synonymous, but like one solid Celtic language from place to place. It probably, like it does everywhere else, even till today. There's probably different dialects of Gaulish or some kind of
Mhm.
um, Celtic language that derives from Proto-Celtic. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything here in my notes. I didn't even think about talking about the language. That's egg on my
That's
face.
okay. Well, I'm sorry I took us down the rabbit hole. But yes, I mean we know just from groups, we know the Gauls, quote unquote, weren't the only Celtic players in town. You also have the Ligurians who had arrived a bit before what we now call the Gauls, and were actually a very big player in terms of being the hired muscle for a lot of Bronze Age civilizations. But as the Iron Age came on, they did kind of drowned out. Now, the Ligurians sadly didn't leave us any writing, so we don't know what exactly their whole deal was in terms of language, but they did leave us brilliant pictographs. They drew absolutely amazing rock art all over the French part of the Southern Alps. Look at the Valley of Marvels if you have the time, and there's wonderful images of people lifting their hands above their head and holding weapons in worship. Um, and it's funny because those rock carvings, as well as very similar rock carvings in the more Ratian territories, which was a group of very very mixed individuals who took on so much Celtic culture and language that they themselves started to become Celtic, at least in culture and a little bit in DNA from what we know, but mostly in culture. They didn't actually start writing down their own script until about 50% of them had become Celtic. And we now think the only reason they started writing was at a sort of last grasping at an independent identity and as sort of rebelling against Celtic. But then that flickered out too, and they adopted a Celtic language, only to then be Romanized about 100 years later. And but the resulting Gallo-Roman language, Romansh, actually still exists to this day. So again, the
Exactly.
Ratians, and they very similarly to the Ligurians, oftentimes did this fun rock art where a person is holding their hands over their heads with knives, and it's very interesting because this is the exact same area where the that witch book, the Malefice Malacarium, whatever that's called.
Yeah, the
But yeah,
Malice Malef
that against witches book that
the
comes from
Malice
that
Malef
area, and a lot of it is
the Malice
drawn on
Maleficarum.
folk
Yeah.
practices. So, and it's funny because again, that would go on to inspire the breakaway movement that came out of all that theosophy stuff, early Wicca. So it may be funny that this gesture in Wicca with the clasped hands over the head actually dates all the way back to Ligurian and Celtified Ratian peoples. So it may be another thing that people who participated in Latin culture may have left us. We don't know for sure, but
Yeah.
it's a fun thing to connect the dots. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so Latin culture primarily started. I was pointing at you. I'm giving you a cue. I'm
Oh,
letting you in because I've been talking too long.
oh, it's totally fine. No, to actually to touch on that before we fully jump in and commit to Latent, those pictographs, I saw them in a documentary on the Celts. I think it's on Magellan TV. I'm not sure if the streaming service is still around. There's some great documentaries on there, but I've never seen those, and I need to take some time and actually look at those pictographs because yeah, it's absolutely fascinating and how well preserved they are even till today.
Mm-hmm. And
But yes,
there's a big conservation effort for them too. If you ever have a few months in the summer, every other year they have volunteers go out because they still have thousands of them that are not documented, and they trace over them with clear sheets of plastic and Sharpie. And it's very interesting because we have depictions of figures that resemble Cernunnos, that resemble Tyrannos, that resemble the Dioscoroi, divine twins.
mm,
Um, we also have just recently one with a giant club and three heads. Gives me strong, Andagda from Ireland, but also
yeah,
strong, the popular conception of Lugus as the triple-headed deity. Which again, we don't know for sure if that is tied to Lugus, but we do see in early Germanic art that there is a triple-headed giant with a big club. We see that on both the Brekete as well as the Zierscheibe, which are decorative plaques, and even the bronze horns that were found in the Netherlands. There's one of them that has a pictograph on it, um, and it features a giant with a club and three heads. So again, that may be more Celtic stuff that's brought further north.
that's fascinating.
Galehus.
I need to put a pin in that because that's fascinating. But
Yeah, this is
to
yeah,
get
Galehus horns. That's what they're called. Galehus, Galehus. Sorry, I don't
okay,
speak
okay,
Dansk, so I apologize.
did better than I would have. But yeah, to get into Latin, so it from what I'm seeing here, the official start date is about 450 BC, and then it carries out until about 1 BC when Rome happened. Um, for a while, it looks like the timeline was split into three: late, middle, and early. But recent historians have kind of categorized it in four sections. So there's
Mhm.
in 1885 a Tischler, Otto Tischler, what it categorized it in one, two, three, and four. One being 450 to 380 BC. Um, oh wait. Oh, you know what? Correction on me. I misread that. Tischler had it in three sections. It was the Paul Reineck that that categorized it in four. So that's on me. I misread that. So yeah, Rhyneck has it in Latin A, B, C, and D. A being 450 to 380 BC, uh, Latin B 380 to 250, Latin C 250 to 150, and then Latin D 150 to the first century BC.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whoopsie on
Yeah.
my
So
part.
as we see with the Lachen culture, um, what are some of the defining characteristics of Lachen culture that at least is observable to us in the modern day? What would you say?
I would say this is when we really see the kind of like organic. A term I've used before, and I think in a podcast a long time ago, is the very like J.R. Tolkien elf-like kind of flowing, organic, like leafy looking designs. This and
Mm.
it's funny because even in my a popular or a common word I see in a lot of my research was swirly. Um, this is where we get a lot of that imagery, it, and
Mm.
and that's what makes it really the more iconic. Because if you like, even going on like Wikipedia and going under the Latin artifacts, some of these things are just absolutely gorgeous. Like the leafy designs and all the engraving. And I doubt these were actually used in combat. These look more ceremonial than anything else. But yeah, just
I
absolute.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
so sure about that because we recently thought that all those crazy helmets were ceremonial too, but we've now seen plenty of them dented and caved in, you know, the ones with the big
Mm.
horns and all of the feathers on top, and even the one with the flappy bird. It's a pretty famous example. Look up Celtic
I was
flapping bird helmet if you got a minute, listener. It's
yeah.
great. But
I I
those
had
were
almost
all
forgot
used in combat. So
that.
perhaps the
That's fair.
swirly ones were too, you know?
Yeah. And actually, now that you say that, there's a shield on here that actually looks like it got smashed in the side. So, um, yeah. So I might be incorrect. These may have been like probably used by rich, probably more
Mm.
like noble type of individuals. But I totally forgot about the Flappy Bird helmet. That thing. It's so cool
It's
looking.
great. The snail ones too. But I like that you actually touch on nobility because we actually start to see the development of a noble class. We see a lot of graves get far more elaborate. There's one specific example where they're buried with a couch. And we also see nobility take on less of an active, war chief role as the time goes on because they find less wear and tear on the nobility joints, no arthritis, less muscle development in the hands, generally softer, wear on the body than what a typical Hallstatt era or even early Lachen era war chief would have had. The time of the biggest, toughest guy leads the tribe was slowly coming to an end because now we have, well, who has the most money, who can pay all of the big, tough, people to surround themselves with. Well, that's the person we're going to listen to. We also start to see. We talked a lot about housing in the last episode, but we see the development of oppidums again, and they don't change much in structure, but they become larger. And so again, that leads us to the idea that there's a lot more urban centers being developed, a lot more trade and commerce. Yeah. So like you said, the swirly designs, and specifically with Lachen, I think what's oftentimes referenced is animal style, that animals come into the art. What's very interesting is oftentimes the comparison is made between Lachen and the later Norse and Celtic knotwork, which there might be some relation in, but the animals are depicted very differently. Whereas in like the Celtic, you may have an animal that is made up of swirls, and in the Norse tradition, you may have abstract animals that are part of the swirls. In Lachen, you really see the animal being depicted pretty realistically for the time being, with a lot of swirling motifs around and behind them. So we still a lot of focal point drawn towards that, and we see a lot of in imagery, a lot of horses, and also a lot of bulls, which I think is interesting during that time period. So we see a lot of depictions and smaller votive objects featuring a bull, some of them three-horned, which is a possibly allusion to a later maybe deity that we get during Roman occupation called Tarvos Trigvaros, or at least labeled like that sometimes, which is the bull with three horns. We also see a similar example on the pillar of a boat of the boatman, which is a bull with three cranes on his back. And who knows if that is a some sort of translation difference or an entirely different image. We don't know, but we do know that during La Tienne era, um, we at the beginning, we have this bull motif, and then it drops off. It seems to fade out. It seems to completely disappear as we get on to the second and third stage of La Tienne development. Before Romans come. But interesting, once we have the incursion of the Romans, and on the end of the La Tienne period, as we now call it, we actually start to see a resurgence of this. We actually start to see a resurgence of La Tienne art style and depictions of three-horned bulls and other older motifs. So what that tells us is that around the La Tienne period is when, despite the fact that they didn't have a singular idea, there was a vague concept of this is us. We do this. We live this way. We eat this way. We have this material culture. And when Roman art and Roman culture increases, there's kind of a longing for this like early Latien, this late Hallstatt, early Latien imagery, the imagery that comes out of that late Hallstatt. We're kind of reaching back for that and pulling it in. But precisely what kind of religion existed or what the structure was during La Chen, we sadly can't say because there was not a lot written down at that time point. Am I right about that?
Oh yeah, that's one of the most frustrating things about Gaulish reconstruction is that we have to go off of Roman, Greek, and other sources like that, and so you have to kind of sift through the biases that are probably written down. And it is definitely very frustrating that we do not have any written firsthand accounts from the Gauls themselves. And the one guy, I think his name is Posidonius, who I think I would see as being the least biased. His work is, of course, very fractured, which
Yeah.
is again extremely frustrating.
Yep, 100%. And that's, the nature of the game. But again, we do have to be thankful that at least we have what we do have. And
Exactly.
it also shows us, the cultures that they interacted with because Lachen is also kind of deeply understood by its influence that it receives from Greece. It had a lot of cultural exchange with Greece, a lot of trading,
Hmm.
because Greece was the powerhouse of the ancient world. Rome was the new up and comer, but while Rome was up and coming, you had Greece, kind of as the gateway to the Mediterranean, and you have the Etruscans and the Romans. The Etruscans are kind of fading into the twilight years, and the Romans are up and coming, and the Celts are, or at least the Lachen, what we now know as the Celts, are the strong northern powerhouse. And you have a lot of those those first Germanic people coming down that interact with Lachen culture, and they start to trade for Lachen goods. They start to make mimicries of the artistic style. Sometimes they have Lachen grave goods further north. So we see that people from all over where we're trading with these people, and it's very very interesting because we have the north and the gateway to the Mediterranean trading over this large landmass, down the Rhine and all these different amber roads. They're trading with each other. And we also get this starting cultural influence from Greece. And we see that go especially towards, art and material possessions. And wine, I think, is a big one too. A lot of wine starts to become popular.
Oh yeah, and actually, it's funny you say that because I was going over the conquest of Gaul, Caesar's account, and when he was talking about the Helvetii. Now, when we see other accounts and various artwork and whatnot, we see just uh, we get these depictions of just Celts wildly running into the Roman lines, very very kind of loose, malleable. It was not only was it just kind of terrifying to see, but it was also a way for them to kind of slip in between uh, uh, the in between the soldiers, which was kind of their that was their kind of the secret sauce to military or Roman tactics was
Yeah,
being
it's
able
guerrilla
to,
warfare.
yeah. But when Caesar describes the Helvetii tactics in the conquest of Gaul, he refers to Helvetii as using phalanxes, which is
Mm-hmm.
very much which is a his famously Greek tactic, and it's like I'm always thinking about that. Like I'm always reading that passage again, seeing maybe if there's like a wordage or something I'm missing. But the now it could just be Caesar just using that type of language, but it it doesn't at the same time like it doesn't quite make sense why he would say that. It's just a big fascinating debate I have with myself every time I go through that book that he described that he describes the Helvetii as having phalanx tactics. It's fascinating to think about.
Yeah, we start to see that exchange already there, and of course, we also have the Galatians, who migrate all the way down to Greece, in the middle of the Latin era. Far before Roman invasions, you have entire, and this is probably going to be an episode on itself. We'll do the Galatians in the future sometime. But it was an entire several groups that broke off and established independent kingdoms and then client kingdoms in and around the borders of Greece and Anatolia. So it's a very interesting. So there's definitely a
It's
lot of contact.
Yeah, it's not often that you have a Celtic group appearing in the Bible either.
Yes, yeah, no, those Galatians. That's exactly who we were writing to. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then by that time, it's very interesting because religious historians have already assumed that by that time they were very, very Greekified, and that their religion was probably
Yes.
centered around Sabazios, Addis,
Mm-hmm.
Cybele, but that they still maintained very much an identity for themselves as Celts, which is seen because especially the outer or their neighbors, I shouldn't say the outer, but everyone surrounding them, their neighbors,
Yeah.
were still very prickly with them. They still very much occupied a spot in the world.
Oh yeah, and yeah, they definitely would have hybridized to like a really, I would imagine a really cool looking uh, Greco-Celtic hybrid culture. Yeah, that's definitely going to earn itself an episode later on down the road because I'll look them up from time to time because yeah, it's just a fascinating concept. There, this tribe that's that far out east and has all this Hellenistic influence.
Yeah.
It's a
So, and
fascinating
again,
topic.
there's no, we have no idea how much contact was exactly maintained, but yeah, it's starting to come into focus, and at least the idea of a sort of people who participate or people who live like we do. Um, maybe not so much as in like a genetic, but people who do what we do, because we see that while Hallstatt was a culture that people were free to participate in, was a broad overculture. This became more of a centralized thing. Again, like we see with the more specific ideas of identity, the more establishment of a ruling class, and we start to get kind of a solidified ideas of, yes, I am Helveti, yes, I am Carnute, yes, I am, Bulgoi, but these people are similar to me, which is when we start to get that idea. Of course, sadly for us, the Gauls could never put those differences aside and grasp the closer relations. Not that the later Germanoi were a lot better at it; they were a little bit better, but not a lot, and that sadly was their undoing. But they were able to at least muster it up a couple times for a little bit, which is better than nothing, you know. And also
Yeah.
shows us, you know, what Vercingetorix really played to, that shared idea, you know, with the Roman encroachment, just like we talked about with the revival of the Lachian era material culture that came. So
Mhm.
it's very interesting, despite the fact that we don't have too much concrete stuff besides archaeology and second and third hand reports. We are able to parse those together and realize that like this is first when a Celtic identity it came to be. And from what I understand, although in this is also where it is connected with other Celtic peoples that we talk about on the islands. From my understanding, I'm no expert when it comes to British, Irish, Scottish, um, and the various tribes that make them up. Um, but from my understanding, there were several migrations of possibly people who spoke related languages to Indo-European, you know, people who had that Yamnaya ancestry that came into the islands first. But there was a move of more Celtic people to the islands during that time period as well. But oftentimes, what we see, at least from my understanding, is wealthy individuals that come over. And so again, it says something. You know, you're now in a place where you can afford to go somewhere with your land, with your money, and establish a dominion over a good piece of land and hire the locals and you know people who are already kind of similar to you, and then you blend together there. So, you know, you have an offshoot of Celtic people that are already there, and then you get a slight influx. But again, that influx is more cultural. It is more high profile individuals in small groups than it is like a mass migration into it.
Yeah.
Um, so they're very interesting. There's a lot of science stuff coming out there as well.
Oh yeah. And I can't remember where I heard it, but the to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, like these migrations across the sea into the islands. Again, I don't remember where I heard this, so take it with a grain of salt. But like the Iceni tribe or the Iceni tribe, which probably is a more accurate way to pronounce it, Boudica,
Yep.
that they were likely a Gaulish tribe that migrated and settled in southern England. But again, I don't know where I heard that, so
No,
I may, you know,
you're probably right. And again, this idea of, you know, at least a hey, you know, we're doing kind of the same thing is actually seen in that because during Gallo-Roman time period, we have a Leopontic um, inscription, I believe, that mentions a Buriaka, not Boudica, but Buriaka, which is identified as at least, you know, a cognate to the same name, you know. And I know there's a lot of in modern polytheistic movements, we're very, very big fans of, you know, putting things in boxes that have even the slightest spelling variations. But I can assure that the Buriaka and Boudica are the same name. Whether that means that it's a reference to the actual historical person or whether it's just a common name at the time, I can't tell you. I've never heard the name in any other context, but
mhm.
it's fun to think. And again, you know,
Yeah,
if the culture spreads that far out, which we see with the cultural influence on the islands, then again, it goes back to what we've been saying this whole time that Lachan is really categorized as becoming a culture with at least a somewhat stable sense of a broad identity, but more narrow than previously. That vague idea of, you know, we do this, we are this tribe. It's now, oh, we're this tribe in the territory of this chieftain who works for this alliance. You know, we're now migrating towards that, but we really start to see the forming of an identity and the benefits that that gives, especially when you are in a place to, you know, become mercenaries, which they did quite a bit, and
oh yeah,
in order to produce high quality goods, and you know, rating is good then. And I think during La Chien is also when we have at least the tail end of it, or is it the middle where we have the first sack of Rome?
I want to say that's in probably Laten 2, or I'm
Yeah,
sorry, Laten B, which is 380 to 250.
yeah. And
I
here's really where we can talk about it because if you don't think about it, it's not something that comes up, but really this is when the trouble starts. The very first sack of Rome, which will lead us into the eventual Roman conquest episode. But
yeah.
the first sack of Rome that Rome never really got over, and then just a couple hundred years later, the Germanoi sack Rome. And what's really funny about the Cimbrian invasion is the fact that a vast majority of the Cimbri that are in leadership positions have Gaulish names, and
hmm
not even Romanized Gaulish names, just Gaulish names. So despite the fact that the bulk of the manpower may have been Germanoi, it does heavily point towards the cultural relevancy that the Gauls had. You know, the fact that there were these high profile individuals, these wealthy war chiefs, I'm assuming, who brought their best guys with um, these the more savage Germano, and the best guys isn't even the only way to describe it. I mean, we know what Celtic women were like on the battlefield, so it probably wasn't just guys.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, we see that, and we see these key players, and again that not necessarily that blending into one identity of the Germano and the Celts, but that very much common grounds, at least in some
Mhm.
aspects, which is really cool.
Absolutely, yeah. It's fascinating. Like for on my WordPress, which took me like weeks to do of research, going over the Cimbrian War. And yeah, and I don't, and yeah, the grudges that Rome holds against Gaul was very clear because the Celtic sacking of Rome, that's where we get the Vivictus thing, and that's where a lot of
Mhm.
animosity, which you can definitely see in, like, I think Pliny the Elder, he does not view Celts in high regard at all,
Mhm. But
especially the Helvet.
what is interesting to note is that even once the Celts were Romanified, Julius Caesar granted them citizenship, but we see even in the 700s when the Franks and the Goths are at the doorstep and they're having their own thing. We're talking way 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 far beyond um, currently, but even then the people living in Gaul refer to themselves as Gauls. So
Hmm.
we see the identity is strong. Hundreds of years after
Oh.
Christianization, even they had their own brand of Christianity. How they were doing things their way there, and so I think more than anything, and that's what I think draws a lot of people to at least incorporating Galpol, if it's not their whole praxis, but incorporating elements of Galpol is that tenacity and that strong sense of this is who we are, whether it is changing to the Greek influence or financial or Roman or Germanic or Christianization. The people there still identified themselves as Gauls until about the year a little above before the year like 900.
Hmm.
So it's incredible testament
Yeah.
to the
And
spirit
even
of people.
and even after the Gaulish culture was basically gone by, and I'm talking like early medieval period, the it, you know, I want to say pre-Hundred Years' War, when even though it's commonly known as like Francia or France, but a lot there are some like medieval sources that still refer to that area as Gaul.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so yeah, that tenacity, yeah, is still there. One quick thing I wanted to touch on, there was something you said about the very unique names. It makes me wonder if this, because we definitely see it in like with the Irish mythology of Cuchulainn. His original name was Satanta, but like it was after, of course, slaying the great hound that he's renamed. So it makes me wonder if this in this time period that culture kind of did this whole, you may be born with a name, but your deeds kind of give you a name, especially with all the
Mm.
different rixes. Orgatorix, it means Kingslayer. It leaves a
Yeah.
lot to
You know,
suggest.
I I can't say that I know too much about that specifically, but I can tell you that at least, the Germanoid did that. They didn't have last names until the Middle Ages. It was
Oh
you
yeah,
were born a name, and then when they eventually did last names in Scandinavia, which they didn't do on the continent, but in Scandinavia, what they would do like son of or half of or
yeah,
descended from, and they would have a last name like that until they did something important, and then it was changed. And it's funny because you see this in a lot of cultures that come from people who spoke Indo-European languages, and even cultures that are influenced by that. Like recently, I've been studying a lot of Tibetan Buddhism, and even in Tibet, a culture which is very, very influenced first uh, by Persian culture, and then later by Indian culture. Um, Even there, you see that you are given a name at birth, but then depending on your life path, your name may change. And then especially when you go to study religion, then you get another religious name. But like I said, someone may be born with a certain name, but then they accomplish something, and then that name might change. So we see that this is a very common practice in a lot of the world. So I wouldn't put it past them. I could totally see
yeah,
that the Gauls being named one or the other, and then it being changed depending upon their deeds.
yeah, absolutely. It and yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like we see this in tons of cultures. Uh, I didn't know that about Tibet. I didn't know there was Persian influence. That's fascinating. Um, the Yeah, just Lieutenant Colt, like even just this conversation, like we brought up these different things I didn't even on my own think about. So I mean, I'm glad that we were able to like sit down and have this conversation about the 10 because like even just like flipping through Wikipedia or whatever, there's a lot more nuance to be discovered, and,
Yeah.
at least to me, yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our kind of a scatterbrained freeform discussion on uh, La Chen. And if you took anything away from this, um, just to summarize it, that this is the time when the development of Celtic identity among the people who actually participated in this lifestyle started to ferment. And we had a real sort of spirit that developed, that really strong spirit of self-identity, that resilience, that thing, that romantic glimmer I think people glimpse when they read something like the Mabinogi, or when they listen to a YouTube compilation of lo-fi flute music with a fairy in the background and vaguely Irish font. But that very same idea of romanticism, of like a spirit, and that's really where this develops, and we see Gaul come out as a major player, at least in terms of trade and in terms of mercenary, and then they make a name for themselves, and they also make their greatest enemy. So if
Oh
anything, this is the middle act. This is the revenge of the Sith.
yeah. Yeah, and what like 2 millennia later, like this culture is being reconstructed by guys like us and a lot of people in
Yep.
our community that like trying to reconstruct the language and the different deities. So yeah, it took a while, but we're all working on it.
And I think that's a testament of it too. You have people who identify with Gaulish polytheism because of how they feel, because of where they live, because of their own personal, I guess, interpretation of their ancestry, right? Because we can't really say that anyone is genetically a Gaul, but they at least our own interpretation, saying, "Oh, my family, as far as I know, came from this area, and these were the people that used to live there." And some people it's just the material culture. You see something, and it inspires it within you, and I think Lichen is was where that all starts. So we really
Yeah.
owe a lot to that. And if that had never developed, then people wouldn't be trying to to reconstruct stuff.
Absolutely. And it definitely is inspiring, inspiring stuff. Like, and if you the listener are a fan of Lord of the Rings that are watching Rings of Power, the elves of Oregion tell me that bronze patina stuff isn't Latin inspired. Have you seen that show yet?
No, I saw the first season, but I haven't seen the second one yet.
I'll have to send you a picture later. There's a city of elves, Eregion. The armor they wear is first off breathtakingly beautiful, but it looks like Celtic inspired like heavy armor, but it's bronze with like that green patina that we see on like a lot of the statuettes and stuff like
Oh,
that.
interesting. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Tolkien was notoriously a fan of at least the imagery of Celtic stuff, and we see that in a lot of his writing. You know, he took a lot of inspiration from Anglo-Saxon, Norse, and even Finnish folklore, but it's also got a good, healthy influence of Celtic stuff there too. So that does not
Oh,
surprise me they went with that direction. That's cool.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, he didn't just take from one source. He took from multiple sources, and it is, yeah, absolutely stunning stuff. But anyway, thank you everybody for joining us, and yeah, we're gonna definitely try to keep this a little bit more regular. Hopefully, no more 4 months off, and that was my fault. That was on me because I had all my kids for the entire summer, and to where I was basically
It
spending.
was
I was
not
spending.
just it was not just you. I was away in New York for a week, and then I was
Oh,
away for like another 2 weeks, and I just started another week-long intensive thing, and we're going into another 3 months thing. So I've been very busy with things as well, and I have not had the time that I thought I would have. So it's not just you. Don't
okay.
put all
Well,
that on
that
yourself.
all right. That makes me feel a lot better. It wasn't just.
Okay, well,
Hey,
we will see you, hear you all next time for a very special episode.
mhm. Yes, very, very,
Mhm.
very special
Very,
episode
very,
that
very.
we are probably going to be talking about for a while because of how near and dear that this this topic is to us.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, tune in next time when we talk about the Reverend Bear Mother. We're really excited. And until then, may Taranos watch over you with his protecting bolts. May Carnonos show you the way through the thicket of life. And may Granos shine upon you and light the way in front of you. May Epona bless your steps and guard your travels. Hail to you, listener. Hail to you, co-host, spirits of the internet, and all those in attendance. Ratante.
Beautifully said. I like that. I like that we're going to end the show with that.